Hey everybody, it's the Trout and welcome to another episode of the Trout Show. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you've ever heard that iconic song by Christopher Cross called Ride Like the Wind, or any of those songs off that album, or you're a fan of that fabulous guitarist Eric Johnson and his iconic song Cliffs of Dover, then you heard my next guest on the show. His name is Tommy Taylor, and he played drums for Christopher Cross and Eric Johnson on both of those iconic albums. But Tommy now has decided to take a little bit detour in his life and decided after years of playing drums, which he still does, he wanted to do his own music, write his own songs, and release them, which he just recently did. And Tommy talks to me about his years of playing with those iconic bands, but also how his new album came to be and how he works with some of the most famous people in the music business to make it sound great. So I hope you like this episode with Tommy Taylor, because it's next on The Trout Show. You've had an illustrious career dealing with some of the great musicians, okay, over the last few decades.
Yeah.
What was the impetus that you said, I need, and you've been kind of the guy in the background. I mean, the drummer's not in the background, but you also did some backing vocals and all that stuff. What was the thing, and I know you're getting ready to say it, but tell me what was the thing that you said, you know what, I want to do an album and I want to put something together.
Well, interestingly enough, Rick, I was, when I got the call to potentially audition for Christopher Cross in 1977, I was already stopping the drums. At that point, I was about to walk away from the drum kit and be a lead singer. I had been singing from behind the kit, and I just realized, it was not, I just felt like I was a really good singer, and people were telling me that, and it was like, okay, well, I think that's a stronger way to make it than being a drummer. Like I've said this before, their singing drummers had been, it had been done, but not very successfully at that point, but by a couple, Don Henley was one. The guy from the Standells, that's about it. It really kicked on, it was kind of like, well, man, if you really want to make it with your own voice, you need to get out front. And I had drummers that I'd worked with, and they were into playing with me, and I had a really good band. On paper, Glenn Fukunaga. He went on to play with Dixie Chicks and Bob Dylan and Joe Walsh and a host of other people. A keyboard player named David Estes was going to play. John Holston, Johnny Reaver was going to be on guitar. My buddy Mark Evans was going to play drums. And I didn't have any material. I was only 19. But it was like, okay, if I start singing, that'll all happen. But if I'm stuck behind the kit, it's not going to. So that got preempted by Christopher Cross. And then it was kind of like, well, you're kind of at a level, you kind of need to sustain that. I got the gig with Eric Johnson, and I just got marooned behind a drum kit for 40 years. It wasn't because I didn't want to be a singer.
Let me ask you a quick question. What songs, and I looked at some of your bio and all that stuff, what songs, what was the big hit that he hit first when you were playing drums for him? Was it
Eric?
Ride Like the,
Christopher
Christopher.
Ride Like the Wind.
That's what I thought. Here's the other thing. I had no idea how great a guitar player he is.
Well, the thing is...
What I was going to say was I was watching Rick Beato, and he had Christopher on there, and he was playing. I guess he had I got the original tapes or something because he could pull the track out. And he says, listen to his lead guitar break on this song. They buried it when they produced it.
Yeah, I have real issues with that because I think, that guitar solo is fine in the mix where it is for what it was.
I know it was supposed to be in the back, but I guess my point is, you think of Christopher Cross, and you were with him during the really big times too. You had that song, and then you had, I forgot, a couple other tunes.
Never Be the Same. He had 6 top 10 singles. I'm on 5 of them, I think. So, but the thing with that is, Christopher Cross was a band. It wasn't a solo artist. A lot of people don't realize that either. Christopher Cross was the name of the band. And of course, he took that, the label named him Christopher Cross and signed him solo to the deal, and the rest is musical history. And I noticed the lack of zeros on the right side of the decimal point of my back. But the thing is like we sustained ourselves. I joined in 77, in August of 77, full time, and we were a cover group. And I had auditioned by recording a set of demos for the group, gratis, for an opportunity to be in the band. Yeah. And all of a sudden, the ball started rolling heavy. They'd been shopping tapes to all of the labels for many years and getting rejections. And all of a sudden, Warner Brothers is extremely interested. We haven't even barely got our copy set together. We've never played any of these songs live, ever. And we've got a showcase on October 31st. And we've been putting together our fraternity set and doing cover gigs. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, you guys got to be a whole other entity in 3 weeks. So it was pretty crazy, but yeah, so, that happened. And like I said, I just, Chris was into my vocals. I did a third of the vocals in the cover band. So Chris would sing a third of the songs. I would sing a third of the songs. And Rob and Andy, the keyboard player and bass player, would split a third of the songs. So I was singing, and Chris, liked my voice, and he said, basically, let's get our record done, and then I'll help you get one done, and then, but, then he got way too huge to bother with that. I thought it'd be pretty cool because I always liked his songs. It's like, well, cool, I don't write, but Chris could write me some good songs. I could be a rock singer, I could be Foreigner, I mean, that's kind of where I was at.
Yeah.
That's kind of where that happened. So, I mean, having gone through a lot of those situations, I mean, it's like, okay, I backed a lot of people, and, for whatever reasons, I mean, those are like, relationships, they get tired. You have a falling out with somebody, or they just make changes. All of the effort that you put into their music, they get to take that away with them, and you got left with nothing.
Yeah. You're a hired gun. That's why they're called hired guns, because you're the guy out front's going to make all the money, and you're just a hired guy that they pay, and
Well, right, and regardless of whether you, excuse me, whether you have participation in those recordings or not, that's all irrelevant. It's the identity. Everybody's out there. I mean, Eric Johnson goes out and plays Flips It Over every night. I made the record. Nobody cares. I mean, some people care. I'm not
I want to tell you something. I care.
I know.
That's one of the most iconic songs as a guitar player. And the fact, didn't you play on the Austin City Limits? Wasn't that you playing?
Yeah.
Back there with Eric in his military outfit or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. And when I saw that, I went, oh, you gotta be freaking kidding me. Because one of the things, we're here to talk about your music, but one of the things is that song to me, as a person playing drums or bass, would be really hard for you. I mean, because it's not like it is a constant beat, but when he's like all over the place, there's no rhythm to it. And
right.
How hard that must be as a drummer and a bass. I mean, the bass player is kind of grooving, but then I thought as a drummer, and then I can tell you, I've watched that video many times. In fact, when I interviewed a gal out of Las Vegas, her name's a great guitarist her name's Neely Brosh. She plays with Cirque du Soleil, and she's played with Danny Elfman and all those players. She did it note for note. And wow. I saw her do it note for note, and I thought, okay, this is insane. How do you do that song note for note unless you're Eric Johnson? And so I knew how difficult it was. I couldn't even attempt to do that. But my point being is, you've been in a position, which is kind of sad in a way, to be with the most iconic people in modern history. And, it's just like you said, they leave, I get nothing.
Right.
But so now here you are all these years later, and you're saying, okay, I got to do something now for myself.
Well, that's kind of it. It's like, well, I want to do some music that nobody can take away from me. And it's a little egotistical, but it's kind of like, hey, man, I did all this, and I've got this level of visibility. And it's not like I need this ego push or anything. It's just like, I'm an artist.
Yep.
I played the drums, but what I did on the drums and my involvement with people's careers is so much more than just the drum track that you hear on the record. And I get very little credit for that. It's kind of like, well, I wanted to be more than a drummer. I always wanted to be in the Beatles. And it failed every time because they always became solo artists. It's like, well, damn it, I'll just be my own Beatles, you know? So, you know, the thing is, I got in a band. Lance Keltner ran into David Holt from Storyville. And
now, is Lance related to Jim?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not that we know of.
Okay.
And, you know, Lance was a friend of mine. I've always loved David. I think he's a terrific artist and guitarist. And they were like chummy and said, well, neither of us are doing anything. Why don't we put a band together? And, you know, he contacted me and said, well, I'd love to play with you and David. That's great. He said, well, we'll get Mark Andrews to play bass. I said, well, man, how could that fail? Yeah. That's a pretty stellar lineup. So we did that. But the emphasis of the band was that everybody was going to write songs and sing. You know, Mark's written or co-written some tunes, and he's a good singer. David certainly he's the songwriter out of all of us and in his genre. And Lance was a terrific songwriter. I didn't write. I was a singer. I said, well, Lance, why don't you write me some songs and I'll sing them? He said, no, that's not going to fly. We're not doing that. You're going to write songs. I went, oh, man, I'm really terrible. You know, I'm just really not very good. You know, and he said, nope, you're going to do it. Go bring me something. So, man, I mean, I learned a lot, you know, I've learned a lot. That was back in 2002. And, you know, I used to sit down and try to write songs. And, you know, I've played with iconic songwriters. I mean, Eric's a great writer. Chris is a great writer. Holt's a great writer. Stephen Doster's a great writer. So many of these people. And Will Sexton, you know, Charlie Sexton, Charlie Rose.
Oh, yeah.
All these, you know, Kelly Willis, I played a little bit with her. Chris McKay, all these people wrote songs. And what am I going to say? I mean, the themes we have that exist. I mean, what am I going to say that's going to be on that level? If I can't be on their level, I don't want to do this. So it became real obvious to me, you know, from my standpoint, some people are really good at sitting down and writing songs because they need to write songs because that's what they're going to do. Yeah. They're going to sing songs. Yeah. I don't do that. I have to have some reason to be writing a song. I've got to have something I need to express. So I had been very enamored with Gin Blossoms. I really loved the Gin Blossoms music when they came out. I thought they were the strongest thing happening, for me at least, during that era. I was kind of put off by grunge, and the pop music had gone really, really kind of a little too squeaky and trite. And I thought Gin Blossoms was a really great representation of a good, solid pop rock band. I love the Byrds influence and the jangly guitars. And I just thought everybody played really cool. I mean, Philip Rhodes on those records, this is probably one of the only drummers I ever heard play that I went, wow, I would have played everything exactly note for note what he played, and probably would have, if I sat down and played it, you wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. Because I really thought Philip was a great drummer. And so I had mentioned that to Lance back in the early 90s. He said, well, you know, Doug Hopkins was the guy in the band that wrote all the songs, and, you know, he killed himself. It's like, whoa, this is way too much information for me. I had no idea.
TMI, yeah.
And so I started looking into Doug's story, and I'm like, it's a tragic story. I mean, Doug was fired from the band. He put the whole band together. He started the band. He hired everybody in the band. He taught the bass player, who was his best friend, how to play bass so he could be in the band with his best friend. I mean, and I started reading about Doug, and I'm reading his story, and I was reading interviews with what Doug had said post being fired from them. And Doug had a lot of personal issues. I'm not going to give him a pass here, but I mean, he's saying basically word for words things that came out of my mouth when Chris fired me from Christopher Cross. I'm going like, I can really relate to this guy on a heavy level. But it's tragic because, I mean, I fared better than Doug did. We don't have Doug anymore. And so that story became impetus for me writing the first song I ever wrote, which is on the record Fall of '93.
And what's the title?
Fall of '93.
Okay.
It's the Ballad of Doug Hopkins. And I wrote a lot of it at home, and I took it to Lance because I was really really, really sort of embryonic. I knew I had something, but it wasn't finished, and I couldn't finish it, and I was kind of scared. And it's always really intimidating to show your stuff to people, especially when you haven't done it and you've backed all these people that are so great, and
Right.
my pittance that I'm going to bring to the table. And Lance said, "Hey, that's really good." I said, "Yeah, man, but you got to help me finish it, man, because I don't know what to do with this."
Yeah.
So he said, "Come over, I've got something." So he played me the first line of the chorus, and I went, "I got it. I can finish it now." And so, I mean, he's not credited as having written it, because he told me, "Look, it's not worth the trouble. I've songs, you'll write some others. It's not that big a deal." From a logistic standpoint. But so Lance contributed the first line to the chorus and the melody of the first line of the chorus and the chord changes. And so I finished it. And so that was kind of like, okay, wow, I've got a song. So we recorded that. And that's actually that band on the recording. So that was the first thing I did, and actually had come across the speakers as something that was mine. And it was really exhilarating to have that happen, and have for the first time to hear something I wrote and I recorded, and it's like, wow, that's we were a band, but it was really mine. I mean, actually that split off into 3 solo projects. I mean, David took most of what we had done in the band and made his record with it. Lance took some of his and did that, but I had that. And so I thought, wow, I did it. I wrote a song and we recorded it and I sang it, and that's really cool. And wow, I wonder if I'll ever do that again. And I didn't really know, man. I really didn't know, because I'm still in that real insecure mode. And I had been sitting on the couch in Lance's studio, and I was just fiddling with this guitar he had. He had a resonator guitar, and it was to the 4th fret, and I think 4th or 5th, and I just started playing that little D chord form, and that little riff for Across the Stars came out. I said, "Lance, can I borrow this guitar?" He said, "Yeah, why?" I said, "Well, I don't think there's a song in it I need to get out." So I took it home, and I played with it a bit, and I got the verse and the refrain, and that's all there was for a while. But it's like, okay, I'm onto something here, and I finished it, and I played it for a friend of mine, and he was like, "Wow, that's really good." I said, "It is." Because I don't know. I mean, everybody thinks what they're doing is good, or they wouldn't do it. But until you have some affirmation from your peer group,
that's true.
You don't know.
Yeah.
And every time I would do that, I would play it for somebody that I respected, and they were all encouraging. And they weren't encouraging in a way that was patronizing.
I think the hardest thing as a songwriter, and it's been a musician as long as I have been, is you have to have people in your life that'll tell you the truth.
Right.
And they don't have to necessarily be musicians, although I have other musicians that listen to my stuff, and I say, okay, what do I need to change on this? Or is there something I need to do? And then and then you have to listen to them. They're not criticizing you, they're helping you. It's kind of like being a producer.
Right.
So,
right.
And when it's funny, because I remember, I don't know what the name of the song was, but my first song I wrote in the 8th grade. So and then for years I didn't write anything, and now it's just like pouring out of me. And I think the one thing you're going through is, as a songwriter, I've done this for so many years, is that moment when you're listening to it. Even if you're playing it, like you're doing the resonator bit, and then you're playing it and you're going like, "Oh, wait a minute, I got something right here." But then when it goes from there, and then you go in the studio and you add all the stuff to it, and you're sitting there listening to this, and and this is the way I look at it, is this just came out of the vapor. It just came to me. Now I'm a big proponent that you're given the gift. You're given the gift. You were given the gift to play drums, and now you're given the gift of like, okay, songwriter. And you're absolutely right when it comes to, I want affirmation about what I play. You always do. You will always want that.
Yeah.
And people always ask you, and this is an interesting side note, it was always harder to play for your friends than it is for people that you know. I mean, that you don't know.
Yeah.
Because and it's like, why? They're going to be less critical of you than people that you don't know. But it's all but like you've got people now you can go to, and they're going to be honest with you and say, do this or do that, or I don't.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because right about that time, I became friends with one of my best friends, Ross Perry, is a blues guitar player from Minneapolis. He had opened a show for Eric at the Surf Ballroom, and we became friends. And he's a good bit younger than I am, but he was down. He came down to visit. He was a big Stevie fan. Obviously, if you're a blues guitar player, then you're into that. And being the age he is, he came down and visited, and we got to go around and see all the haunts where all that had kind of taken place and everything. But we had taken a trip in Minnesota, and that's kind of where Cloquet came from. It was a recounting of the events of that trip. And I remember, because I'm still not a writer. At this point, I'm just basically, and certainly you gotta, I have to be in a position where I feel comfortable around somebody before I'm going to sit down and play a song for somebody with just me and the guitar. We're talking 2003.
Yeah.
So I remember I sat down and I was really excited about Cloquet when I finished it, because I thought it was really cool and it was different, and I liked all the parts, and I could play it by myself, and so I remember he was sitting in my living room, and I said, "Hey, I got a song I want to play you," and he's like real open to that, and I was comfortable enough with him. I felt like play it, and so I played the song, and I finished, and he's Midwestern, so he's not real demonstrative. It's like they're not like Texas, like it's a whole different thing. And I remember, and he like started clapping, and it was like, wow, that's pretty, because it's like I really struck a nerve. It must, like I said, not you're not going to get that kind of response out of him unless it really moved him. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. So at that point I've got 3 songs, and I'm just like going, okay, well, I got to figure out a way to make this happen and to document it, because otherwise, if I don't tape them, I'll just forget them. And I'm pro enough to realize it's like, doing it we didn't have cell phones, doing it into the cassette deck that's not gonna suffice demo. No. So, Brad Kopp, who is a wonderful person, champion of mine for most of my career. Half the bands I played with in the 90s were bands that he got in and said, we need to get rid of the drummer and get Tommy. So, but he had a studio. He used to work at Congress House with Mark Hallman, and then he split off and got his own thing together in his house in Utah. And he said, hey, man, you don't have to pay me. Just come over. We'll set up a mic, and we'll get a couple of things down. So I went over there fully intending for him to play the guitar, because I was not confident enough in my guitar playing. I wanted a real acoustic guitar player to lay down some tracks to a click that I could sing to, and we'd have a good thing. And I went in there, I played the song. He said, you've got to play it. I went, oh, no, we're not doing that. He said, no, you're going to play the guitar. I went, Brad, come on, man, really? No. And he said, no, you know how this is because you wrote it. I'm not going to get those nuances. You've got to do it. So he was the one who made me record the guitar. So I had guitar and vocal on 2 songs, and plus the one that we'd done, Fall of '93 with Lance. I'm going like, well, okay then. We let's see what happens. But if we get more tunes, then we can continue to do this. And I'd always wanted to work with Mark Hallman. Since he was working with Carole King back at Pecan Street, back in the Christopher Cross days, because I just thought he's just got such a great ear, and he's got such a great sense of production. And I thought, we don't clash.
That's big when you're a producer.
It's huge. Mark is somebody that can take your thing and go, okay, cool, I see where you're wanting to go with this. Let me help you. And, so I rang Mark up, and I kind of showed him the songs, and he was like, yeah, man, that's pretty cool. I said, well, we could put some drums on that, add some bass and hear whatever. So that's kind of how the idea sort of gestated, and we moved forward,
But Tommy, here's the thing. You had to go through, life is a series of things that happened to you.
Yeah.
You had to go through all that to get where you are. I mean, just the fact that you could pick up a phone and call somebody like that and say, "Hey, would you listen to this?" Well, you had
Yeah.
to, look at the iconic people you played with. So you already had a reputation. Now, not everybody may know who your name is, but to be able to talk to people like that and say, "Hey, and personally have the guts to say, I got a song," and they're going to be honest with you, and then
Well,
say to them, "Hey, have you got any? How about producing for me?" and
right.
and
Well,
you and that, but you had to have the reputation that you built up over the years to be able to get where you are.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. I think so too. The most interesting thing happened was when Rob Muir, who was the keyboardist in Christopher Cross, he was a total champion for me, and I love Rob's piano playing. He was a study. He definitely took a lot from Michael Omartian because Michael played the grand piano on the Christopher Cross stuff, and just watching Michael for 2 weeks do that. Rob completely shifted in his consciousness of what the piano was. And you hear that on Minstrel Gigolo on the Christopher Cross record. That's Rob on the grand piano after being sort of watching the sidelines of having Michael Omartian play the grand piano for 2 weeks. Rob became a brilliant pianist. And so when I wanted piano on Everybody's Gonna Let You Down, we had recorded it with David, Mark Andes, and myself. And I started out the same way at Brad's on the acoustic guitar with a click track. And Rob was going to be in town for a little Christopher Cross reunion show we were doing. And I said, "Hey, I got a song, man. Would you play piano?" And he said, "Sure, man. I'd love to do that. Let me set some time aside." So he came in and he played that first take. And it was just brilliant. I said, "God, Rob, I don't know that we could do any better than that. Let's just..." And he was very into it, And he had always wanted organ on the song, and we never got around to it. But when it came, I had written some other tunes, and I showed him my scratches, and he was analytical and coaching and pointing me in certain directions. But I finished the Summit. I was very excited about Summit, and I wanted him to play on it, and I felt like that was a shift in where I was going, and I needed to cut that and get that one finished. I'll go back and finish the rest of them later. Mm-hmm. So Rob was going to come to Texas to record that. He's going to visit his mom in San Antonio. And, I went to St. Paul to get the vibe together for the song. It's about St. Paul, Minnesota. And I got a call from Andy Solomon on the 24th of September of 2016 that Rob had been hit by a drunk driver walking home from a convenience store in Studio City. And, 2 hours later, he was dead. Mm. So that left me with a real gap on many, many levels. I no longer had the confidant. I no longer had the champion in my court. I lost a great friend, and I didn't have a piano player. And I needed somebody great. And there's lots of people at Austin that could have done the song, but something pushed me beyond that. I said, this is not working. I need Michael Omartian. And I didn't have contact for Michael. Chet Himes didn't have contact for Michael. The only person I knew who had contact was Chris. And I don't really like calling Chris and asking him for favors.
Yeah, I understand.
But it was a weak moment because he had also lost his best friend, Rob. And I said, "Look, man, Rob's gone. I got a song I need recorded. Would you call Michael Omartian and ask him to play on my song?" And that was about as gutsy as I could get. I was desperate and I didn't care. I'm going to throw it. I'm going to throw
the old saying, and I tell people, especially new people, if you never ask, the answer is always no.
Always no.
And that just reinforces it right there. You ask. If he said no, it's like, well, it's no. If it's not, then guess what?
Well, it's interesting because, Chris, obviously, we have some issues. There's some long-term issues that are never going to be cleared up.
No.
And he's aware of them, and I am too. And it's just like it's not a bridge that's going to be built. But I think he took it as an opportunity to maybe try to assuage some of that. And
when was this?
This was 2015.
Okay.
I had gotten the bass put on. Roscoe Beck played the bass. I had the acoustic guitar and the drums and the lead.
I was going to say, I knew who the drummer was. You didn't have to ask a drummer.
And so before I could hear back from Chris, I had an email from Michael Omartian. Hey, Tommy, give me a call. I hear you want me to play on your song. It's like, wow, this is weird. Because, I mean, I knew Michael barely. You know, we worked, you know, a couple of weeks on the first Christopher Cross record and a couple of weeks on the second one. And that's really the only contact. I had run into him again at Arlen Studios in Austin back in the early mid-90s. And we had a wonderful exchange. But still, I mean, Michael Omartian, I mean, you think Christopher Cross is big. He's like a blip on the screen of Michael Omartian. Michael sold 350 million albums. He played most of the piano on the iconic Steely Dan tracks. He's produced Donna Summer, Rod Stewart, Shania Twain, Michael Bolton, the Four Tops, the Jacksons. I mean, it's endless. The guy's mega as it gets.
Well, the fact that he played on Steely Dan tells you something right there.
Well, I mean, he played on Dr. Wu. If you take his piano off, you don't have a song. Yeah. It's not that. I mean, they're incredible, but I mean, it's the voicings, it's the chord voicings.
Those guys were so picky.
Oh, and just makes those records to me. Ricky Don't Lose That Number. I mean, it's just the piano is the whole song. Yeah. I mean, and he just has that. No, there's nobody like him. But he doesn't have to give me the time of day. I mean, he barely knows me. So I called him up, I think, and I sent him the song, I think. And he said, call me. And I called him. He said, so that's you singing? I said, yeah. He said, sounds really good, man. I said, he said, you're playing drums? I said, yeah. He said, you're solid as ever. It's really great. So it's a really great song. I really liked it.
And what was the name of this song?
Summit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he said, I'd like to play on it. One thing, would you mind if I played some organ on it? It's like, I was like, wow, that's a novel idea. I'm begging you to play a piano one for me, and you're offering to play organ. And I knew, I mean, it's like, look, I mean, I can put two and two together. Nobody's like out there wanting to do more than you ask them to unless they're into it.
That's exactly right. I was going to say the same thing.
Wow, Michael Omartian likes my song enough to want to add organ.
Yeah.
I'm having serious goosebump pinch me moments. And so I'm freaked out because I realize I've just opened this door and I don't know where it leads. And so he played, and, you know, I got the track back. And I don't know what to expect, and I don't know where he's going to come in.
So you just sent him the tracks of the stem, so to speak, or the
yeah. Went in the studio. Actually, he messaged me and said, "Look, I want to go in and play your song, but I've got a splinter in my finger, and I can't play as hard on your song as I would like to." I've told the story before, and it's like he has a model train set, right? Like this immense layout in his basement.
Right. Yeah,
incredible. And he does all of the detailed work. He builds all of the buildings out of balsa.
Oh, one of those guys. Okay.
Yeah. But he had run a splinter in one of his fingers, and it was causing him some pain. Michael Omartian plays piano so hard. I mean, he when we would record it at Amigo with Christopher Cross, they had an old Steinway there, and he would play it so hard, and the pin block was so old that he would bang it out of tune after 4 takes. They'd have to retune it.
Oh wow!
So, but the part that he heard on this song, he wanted to lay into it so hard he couldn't play it until his finger healed. I said, "Man, Michael, the fact that you're even going to play, I'll lay down and die now. You can do it whenever you want. I've waited 60 years for this. I don't care, you know." And he was like, "Cool, I'll do it," you know. So he sends me the track back. And I'm listening, and I do the acoustic, and I come in the vocal, and he comes in on the refrain, and he, man, I mean, he does just one of those Omartian things, and my knees buckled. Yeah. You know, I mean, it was a pretty incredible moment, and so I was just completely knocked out. I mean, I didn't even know what to think. So. File that away. I mean, I've got another track I can really build on. So I'm working on Across the Stars, which is the second song I ever wrote, the one that I wrote on Lance's resonator guitar. And I sent it to another keyboard player thinking, okay, well, I'm if you don't ask, you know, the answer is no. So I said, well, what have I got to lose? I'll see about this. Somebody who I really admired, and they cut a track, and it had potential, but it was a little disjointed and not cut on a real grand. It was cut on a digital piano, and Mark wasn't really in favor of the sounds, and I have to go with Mark's opinion because that's what he's there for. And I just went, I wonder if I could get Michael to play another track. I'm really stepping out now, you know. I mean, I'm cautious, and it's like, because I mean, he's so gracious. I don't want to push my luck, you know.
No.
But like you said, if you don't ask, the answer is no. So I messaged Michael and said, hey, I've got this other song I'm working on. I sent it to somebody, and we're not 100% thrilled with the track, you know, and we have yours, obviously, is the bar. Would you possibly do another track for me? And he said, send me anything you like. I'll play on anything you want me to play on. I like what. I'm like, what? So I sent to him and said, yeah, I really love this. It's great. I'll track it, you know. And he said, I had told him about the figure in the front, and I said, I'm going to have accordion here, just so you know where the piano needs to be and everything. And I'm going to have stand. I said, cool. So he called me and said, so you want accordion on this? I said, you heard accordion on this? I said, yeah, it's going to play that little figure on the guitar with the guitar. He says, I got a pretty good sounding one here. I said, well, I didn't ask you to play you play accordion? He said, did you ever hear of a song called Piano Man by Billy Joel?
Was that him?
I said, I don't think there's anybody in the world that hasn't heard
that song.
It was one of my first gigs. I was like, I had no idea you even played accordion. If you want to play the accordion, most welcome. Just go right ahead. Do your thing. So he sends me the track back, and the accordion's there, and the piano's there, and I'm just going, God, I can't believe this is turning into something so far beyond what I ever dreamed I'd be able to accomplish because of his musical expertise, you know? I mean, he actually produces, to an extent by contributing to the arrangement, you know? I mean, he hears things, but it's just a magic thing. So, I mean, that's kind of how the record started raising up, by leaps and bounds, every time I would send him off something.
Let me ask you a quick question. You started this journey on to finish this album was 20 years ago, over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And then you got to the point, and I've listened to a couple of tunes on there, but how many tunes are on the album?
9. Yeah.
9. And here you are. I always believe that there's something magical about being a creative person involved with creative people. And, in your situation, I go back to what I said. If you hadn't known all those people and they didn't respect you, he would have just said, first off, he wouldn't have ever called you back. He would have answered your email.
I mean, and to his credit, Chris basically asked him to do it as a favor to try and help fix some of the past, which is Michael basically coming on board initially in his mind to help Chris.
Yeah.
But once he heard the songs, it was like, well, yeah, that's kind of what started this, but I don't need that. I'm doing this because I love what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think it's musicians that are, and this is the one thing, of course, as we get older, your ego should be fading away. We don't need affirmation as much because it's like, hey, I'm older now. I don't really care whether you like it or not. Screw you. If you like it, great. But the other part of it is when you get to the point where you want to add it, there's two things. One is they obviously like the music. They wouldn't play on it. I mean, unless you're paid, that's a different thing. You're a studio guy, you get paid, I'll play on it, Yeah. But the other part of it is the years of experience that both you and him have makes it, I know this sounds funny, it makes it easier to a certain extent. I mean, he's produced so many different people and played on so many different things that his mind is full of stuff. So when he heard your song and you go accordion, you're like, well, I heard accordion here. And you're like, what? And then that's the magic that I like about there's advantages being in the studio and there's advantages not being in the studio, is that play that you get. Because my first album was in '94, and I went into studio, recorded it, and I just hired all studio people. Okay.
Right.
And my producer, the engineer, I'm bringing a keyboard player in. If you like them, and I told him, if I don't like these guys, I'm gonna hire new people.
Right.
And I'd written a tune, and it was a blues song, and he said, now what we're going to do is we're just going to let him go. I go, what? He says, we're just going to play it for him, and it may sound really weird, but when he's finished, I think you'll like it. So I'll never forget it. He had a keyboard in the studio itself. He wasn't in the booth. Right. And I was playing a song, and he's playing all this stuff on. I'm going like, what the hell's all this? And then I heard it back, and I went, oh, okay. And my point being is he already heard, and that's the other great thing about it. You don't hear what they hear. And on the blues song, I told him, I said I'd finished it up, and there was a 8-bar section in there for him to play a piano lead part on it. And I said, it's in the key. He goes, never mind. One take, he put it through. Yeah. And I went, okay, why am I worried about this? So, I mean, I wasn't worried about it, but you're just kind of like it. But the other thing about it is when you have your name on a song or you're bringing stuff out, it's yours, and no matter what you say or what people say, people don't ask you if you bring it, when you brought this album out, I'm sure people don't go like, well, who played drums on it or who played this on it? No, they go, is that you singing? Did you write this song?
Well, to an extent, a lot. I mean, Michael's parts have gotten a lot of attention, actually, but they should.
Sure, but you're the one that wrote the song.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's the interesting thing because, I mean, I've had Michael and I. That it started out as he's going to play one piano track for me. It developed into a lifelong friendship. We've had 3-hour chat sessions on computer. I've talked to him. I go visit him in his home in Nashville. He's a splendid person. He's one of the kindest and most honest people I've ever met. He doesn't pull any punches. And, he's told me, I mean, I went to lunch with him about a year ago. I was in Nashville passing through. And I said, what are you doing? He said, nothing. I said, what do you mean? He said, yeah, I don't really care to do this anymore. I mean, if you look at him, I mean, he's played enough.
No, but I understand.
He just said, he said, I'll play on your stuff because it's good.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to play on. It's easy for me to come up with something to play. I like doing it. It makes me feel good. People bring me stuff. People just don't write very good songs, and I've done it. I don't need to do this anymore. I don't need, I mean, he certainly doesn't need the money. And he just, I mean, it's not that he's above it and he won't do it if he hears something that's exciting. I've seen him, I mean, I keep up with him through my friend Tom Henley, and they do sessions and stuff together, but I mean, he's just not as prolific. And he said, to be honest with you, there's a lot of young cats out there. They get the calls and I'm not that popular. It's like, God.
You released this back, the one out now in September. Did you say you're working on another one now?
I held this for a long time. I've actually had this mixed and mastered since, what year is it going to be? It's 2024 now, since early 2022. I had finished everything. I think I'd finished all of the tracking by Christmas, just after Christmas 2020. The problem is, Rick, is it's the climate. Releasing a record in this day and time is just
it's bad.
I really felt like, and finally I just got pushed to put it out. I dropped a smattering of tracks with videos out just for my fans that I had, my Facebook following and stuff, so they wouldn't think I was the kid bragging about the dragster he's building in the garage that they've never seen. And I said, no, look, I'm for real. I've got something for real. I'm not playing. I know what the quality is because I know the people have put so much into it. But for me, it's like, wow, this turned out so much better than I would have ever dreamed or ever hoped. and people put so much of their love and care for me into it, you know, for very little return. It would be a disservice to them if I didn't try and maximize whatever potentials I could for getting it visible and being heard. And I just didn't see the avenues. It's like, I'm not going to just throw this out there like a piece of paper and have it blow away in the wind and never be heard. So that's what kept me from doing it. But all the time I'm sitting there, I didn't quit writing and I didn't quit recording. So I actually am, they're not finished, mixed, mastered, whatever, but I've got a pretty good distance done on 7 songs for another album. And also, I didn't want to be the guy that gets the record out in case anything happened with it, and then you're left with your pants down because you don't have anything to follow it up with, you know. And so, you know, it takes a bit of time to make quality. So, you know, I figure, well, no time like the present to get started and get some mileage behind you on that. So yeah, I'm pretty. I could work. I've probably got songs I could finish that would fill out the rest of the record. If not, I can do it with cover. I've got a cover on the second record already that's pretty much finished.
So let me ask you about this before I wrap up here, because when you brought this out, and I will tell you, as you know this, the recording industry's changed so much now that it's never going to go back to where it was. You know, although vinyl now is, people are starting to buy vinyl, which is kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
What's your goal now? Just to keep putting out music until you're happy with it? I mean, just keep releasing and, you know.
Well, because, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, building an audience. I mean, I was never, these people go, like, are you going to tour? It's like, are you crazy? With what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did you hear the record? Okay, right, you did? Right. Well, okay, well, where am I going to be able to get the money to pay 10 guys to try and replicate it? Yeah, I can go out and play those songs by myself, sure. And I'm going to do a little bit of that. I've got a young artist I'm producing that I've kind of mentored for a while, and he just moved to Austin. So he's a great accompanist. He loves my music. I play on his stuff. He's going to be playing on mine. We can go out and do, you know, duos. I can play solo. I'd like to play out a little bit more. I mean, financially, yeah, you might make a few coins. That's okay. I need money. I mean, I'm not like independently wealthy. I didn't make enough money in the music business to quit. I have a side job. You know, I'm of the age where the government is giving me something, but I mean, still have to, you know, I have to amass something each month to try and get by. I mean, the records cost me money. It's, you know, it's like a miracle would have to happen for me to make profit on the record.
At the end of the day, is as musicians, and we do it for the fun of it.
I'm gonna make my way across the stars someday, where nothing's lost and nothing's a gain. I'm gonna steal away to where the bagpipes play and minstrels sing in a sweet refrain, where the hands of time won't ever bother me, and worry has no place to stay. I'm gonna make that climb up to the timberline, while steal away. my home. For I long to climb in love sublime, with higher hearts I long to roam, where only joy and love can ever find me, and everyone has a place to play. And in that light I find the song that's inside me, then I'll steal away. I'm gonna make my way across the stars someday, where nothing's lost and nothing's a gain.